This is Lancaster Woodturners Weekly Coffee Hour number 247 for April 3rd to 2025. My name's John Kelsey. I'll be your moderator as usual. I'm operating from my laptop this morning, which gives me a real leg up on getting the recording posted because I'm recording straight from the screen and I use the new multi-view and I just post that and it seems to work pretty good. So that's what's going to happen here this morning. If there's club news, let's take it, and then I'm going to hold the floor for a minute, but I'm going to go to the hands. Any club news of events coming up? When's Lancaster Open Shop? Does anybody know?
I'm sorry.
This next Lancaster Open Shop is not this Saturday, but the next Saturday.
Correct. Sorry, John, my computer froze again. I still don't have good internet.
Well, that'll be the 12th.
The 12th, exactly.
Yeah. Other club news, Nittany Valley, Susquehanna?
This is Ken from Nittany Valley Woodturners. We had our general meeting last night, and we had Danielle Barber there doing a demo on her spring flowers. She was really amazing. She's very poised and very well spoken, very knowledgeable. We were quite pleased with her coming up and visiting us, and we just want to thank her for that.
And I think Lancaster Club was Tuesday night with Bill Heaps. Am I right about that?
And Barry.
And Barry. How'd that go?
Barry's he did a great job showing how he made his I don't know what you call it, open segmented bowl. I mean, he brought pieces, he showed how he glued it together on a faceplate or on the base. Actually glued a couple pieces on the base. So he went through it in about 20 minutes and it was very informative. And then you could come up and look at how he constructed the, I'll call it the blank. It was far from a blank. It was very sophisticated. You can imagine Barry, obviously he said this when he showed it last week or the week before, I guess it was. He spent more time designing it on the computer than he did cutting it out or turning it.
Well, you guys might not know this about Barry, but Barry's an aeronautical engineer and a tool, and he was also trained as a pattern maker and tool maker, and he worked for NASA. So he's well trained in complexities.
The challenge with that is when you make something so elaborate and the last thing you do is shape it with a gouge, it would just disintegrate for me. And then you have a whole week of work gone. He says, though, he only lost one, did he say? Maybe.
I think he said he maybe lost one or had a problem with one of them. I can't imagine making more than one of these things. I mean, he put so much time. But I have to say, once I saw how he did it, it's like, oh my God. In a way, it was kind of simple.
Yeah.
You know, you just got to do it over and over again.
Step by step to make it as simple as possible. What do they say? You can make certain things you can't get any more simple than the simplest. And his was actually the simplest to come up with that complicated shape.
But the precision that he needed to do that, everything had to be very precise.
Oh, yeah.
Well, that's Barry. And that's how you get to the moon, one step at a time.
Yeah, you can't really get halfway there.
No, you can't. And then you get a giant step for mankind.
Yeah, I was just going to say, how do you step to the moon? You have to kind of fly first.
Yeah,
well,
kind of fly.
Dr. Armstrong made it.
Oh, I think go ahead.
So one of the things about Barry's presentation it was just alluded to, and that is with segmented turning, precision in the cutting is absolutely key. So if you're going to start into that, like Dave said, if you want anything, you have to be absolutely precise at the beginning because you can't fix it after it's cut. So,
right, that's right. So that's your table saw and whatever else you're using to make the raw materials to precisely to the dimension. And you really need to batch the stuff. You can't make a set of parts and then make another set of parts and have it precisely match, unless you're Barry, but I can't. The second time I try and make a set of parts, it's never quite the same as the first time.
Exactly.
No, I saw a presentation from a guy named Spencer Heyman. He's the president of OTI now, and he does violin repairs, and he makes the pegs that he has to do exactly 238 thousandths of an inch across the entire length of that piece, which is about 1.5 inches long.
Some people can do that.
Yeah.
Well, if I understood right, Barry had 7 layers of those slots, and each layer had a different dimension. So
Yeah,
60
that's
was it 16 around and 7 high.
Right.
I think, and each
Yeah.
layer, I go, geez.
But his 16 dimensions were in length. They weren't in the thickness. So you notice he did have different lengths, but it was not in that thickness for precisely where it had to be matching. So again,
and I've seen
well chosen.
those of you who have seen Barry's shop, you can see how he's able to do that sort of thing. He is extraordinarily well equipped, and not over equipped either. And it's a big shop. Well, it's a 2-car garage size shop. And
What I found interesting about the meeting, not to get into it too much, but Bill Heaps hasn't been turning that long, and he is now the vice president in charge of demonstrations, and he was kind of struggling with figuring out who was going to demonstrate. And when he showed his, I'll call it his catenary corkboard two weeks ago, thanks to John Kelsey, and some encouragement from a few others, Bill actually put together a little slideshow, and he showed how he uses his corkboard to create catenaries that he then uses to shape pieces of cardboard that he cuts out as templates for his bowls. What I found interesting about the conversation is somebody, I forget who it was, it might have been Angelo. He goes, well, how do you make a curve? How do you make an enclosed form with a catenary? Because a catenary can never become normal to the horizontal top of the bowl. It just can't be. And that kind of stumped some people for a bit, but it was still a really interesting demonstration. I give Bill credit for stepping up and doing that, because he's a relatively new turner. And then the diametric opposed thing was Barry's open segmented bowl. So we had a relatively new turner and then the precision of Barry. So you want to talk about different ends of the spectrum. And I found it to be actually a good demonstrations. Instead of having one person doing a bunch of turning, there was really no turning involved at the demonstration. Yet I found it very, very interesting and enjoyable.
I'm very much in favor of encouraging recent turners to demonstrate, because they know they're investigating things that more experienced turners take for granted.
Yep.
And they're right on top of it. You get some very interesting insights, and even a very beginner can, okay, here's what I learned, and it can be very interesting, and you get new perspectives every time. Has been my experience.
Another positive was that he had a handout that he had for everyone. That was very nice.
Yeah, that was sent out ahead of the meeting too, which I really appreciated.
Yeah,
I was not able to attend, so
I agree with you, Dave.
Sometime I'd like to have a conversation about the BS of shapes. I'm calling it that because my son, when he went to art school, said the most important course is BS 101, Art 101. So you have the language for it, but does it describe anything? Like even the bills led to, well, what's the difference between a parabolic? No, palabral, did I say?
Parabolic.
Catenary. Well, it's very small. And then the conversation about what's the difference between the golden triangle or the golden equation and the thirds. Again, very hundredths or tenths of a number different.
The eye can see it. The eye can see it, and it doesn't matter. There's no right or wrong in there. It's what, and in the end, it's what you like, what looks good to you.
You can only see it by comparison, though.
Yes, or measurement.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there isn't a right answer. I remember lots of critiques with experienced guys where, there is no right answer here. There is no, is it any good? Is not a question.
There is whereas I can't describe a catenary curve or a parabolic curve, there is a thing sometimes so that you can describe a shape that just doesn't feel right to you. And that's and I would say feel right to you because some shapes feel better better for others than they do for me. But yeah, I've never used any of those curves, but I just like the shapes sometimes. So
I'll bet if you looked at the shapes you make against some of those curves, you'd find they're pretty darn close.
Well, I've done that, and I know they are, but that wasn't intentional. It's like
it doesn't matter.
I know it doesn't matter, John, but I'm just saying that's when people go back and look at artists and said, "Oh, they planned this." No, they didn't plan it. They saw it, and that's what happened, as opposed to. But if you don't know your shapes, knowing those shapes and learning those shapes of the eye, getting your eye used to that's one of the things that was mentioned. Is just getting your eye used to that shape makes a whole lot of difference to the shape you turn.
If you look at antique furniture, which I've done a lot, and carefully measure it, you'll find that almost all of it is small whole number proportions, lengths to width to depth will be small whole numbers, and it's 3-to-1, 2-to-1 ratios like that, and the eye likes that. And I think it's that the eye, like music, enjoys the traverse of the relationship of the time it takes to look at it, and the way the eye sees it in a way that we can't quite articulate is what I believe.
I think it's a lot to do with intuition, and the way you train your intuition is to absorb that information, and soon it becomes part of the process. So I'm getting a little philosophical about it. But
Yeah, that's true, and that was a great discussion last week. I really appreciated. I saw it all through the post. I got the video posted this morning, actually, last night and this morning. So I'm not going to catch up on the holes in the video sequence, but I'm getting better able at keeping up with it as we go forward, largely by using this new view that Zoom offers. It gives me if I just record straight to my laptop, that gives me a video that the video is what I see he as moderator, and it seems to work well enough. So with that said, I'm going to, since I'm talking, I'm going to hold the floor a minute. I want to continue the discussion of my own stuff that I showed a couple of weeks ago. I have a couple more things to add to that conversation, if that's all right with you guys, and then I'll go to the hands. I won't.
John, could I just make a shout out for Duxbury, Jim? His article in the Wood Turning magazine. If you can't find that magazine, I found it in Barnes and Noble recently. It's a good article on pewter. So just for everybody, just know where to find it if you want.
I think a lot of people should have that magazine. They don't edit it. That's what Duxbury likes about it. Whatever he gives them, they print. So, and you can get it online too, I'm told. In fact, last time we were talking about it, Jeff posted a link to where it turns up online, so that was also pretty useful. I was talking about magnet boxes, and I'm going to show a couple of things. We saw this pair before. These are 3.5, but what we didn't talk about before is finish. This one, this forward one here, is Osmo satin, and this is Osmo gloss. And I'm going to just try and get them in front of my body. I like the satin, and I think it'll hold up better in the pocket. This is 3 coats in each case, 1 buffed on, and then 2 more wiped on, and then wiped right off. But and what I'm after here is, this is that lovely mahogany. So whichever way you look at it, it's very rowy. So the light stripe turns dark as you look at it in different lights. And that's part of it. That's what I like about it the most. I realized that if I were selling these, the glossy version would be the one that would sell. This one. That's the one people would pick up and enjoy. But I like that least. I like the matte version. I think that will survive better in the pocket. So we saw these boxes before, so I won't go into their internal gubbins, except there was something I wanted to note about it. Yeah, this is the one where I discovered that I can conceal the magnets in the base of the box just by controlling the depth of the drilling. And my apparatus is actually able to do that if I remember to do it. And this is also one of the ones where I discovered I can use baking soda. I can install the magnet, drip in one drip of CA glue to anchor it in the hole, then pack the hole with baking soda and drip in more CA, and it gives me this white pearlescent magnet. It looks almost like it was shell in there. The magnet is about a 32nd below the surface. And I really quite like the look of that, and so I'm pretty happy with that. And I'll explain why I'm paying attention to that. And it works very well with his inside shape. And I also like the definition of the line as well as the curved. You can really get a hold of whatever you're trying to get out of there, whether it's your Tic Tacs or your meds or whatever, or your snuff or whatever. So that's and one of the points about this is a 3.5 in diameter. This is about 3.25, and this is about 3 inches. And the difference in the way the box feels, so that 1/2 inch is amazing to me. I'm much happier with the smaller one as a pocket box. And the other thing I want to show you about this one is I took your advice from the last time we talked, and as you can see here, there are 12 little pearlescent dots around here. 4 of them are magnets, and the other 8 are just blind holes filled with the same mix of baking soda and super glue. And in this one, I was able to control the depth of the bore here, so they don't appear in the inside here. And this is nicely dimensioned because there's no double layer or anything like that. The magnets are just in here, and 4 of them come through and are also filled on the inside. And the rest of it is just decorative. So I'm pretty happy with that as a start down the road for where I'm going to go next with these things. So the next place I went with that is, let's see if we can dye it. And I discovered that you can put transtint dye into a baking powder. You put a couple of drops of transtint dye into a little bit of baking powder in a little plastic cup, stir it up and make some paste, let it dry, and then mash it up. And you've got a colored baking soda that you can pack in the holes. And so this one, the first one that I made like that, has a blue. It's a blue embellishment. Now this box, the other thing part of my goal with this, I made a lot of these and I always talk about drawing. Well, I don't draw these anymore. That's part of my goal in making multiples, is I want to get to where I understand it well enough to just make it. And I'm at that place with these boxes now. They're a little bit complex and a little bit tricky, but I don't need a drawing. I just make the thing. I have to do some measuring as I go, but an awful lot of it is eyeball as you go as well. So I'm happy with that. But I made a goof in this one, the kind of goof that you sometimes make. I got one hole in the wrong place. So there's an extra hole in there. And I also did not set the depth stop on the inside, so these go right through. So two blunders on this one, but nevertheless, it came out, well, not okay because of that extra. I could have carried on with the extra holes all around, and I didn't, because it was an experiment. I wanted to know if the color worked. So the next thing I did before I got sick was I made a little bit of red and yellow and blue transtint dye and baking soda mixes. So now I've got colored powders that I can use to pack these holes, and that'll be my next round of experiments. The other thing that I did, I've showed this one before. This is what I'm very happy with. The magnets are hidden in here. In this case, the hidden piece, it's an L-shaped piece. So the glue line this is not an L-shaped piece. This is just a sleeve. There is a glue line in there, but it's barely visible. So there's just a sleeve here concealing the magnets from outside view, but they are inside and they're packed with the opalescent material again. And I'm quite happy with the shape of that as a small little tabletop box. And it closes, it stays closed. You pick it up by the lid, the bottom doesn't fall off. You open it easily, it closes with a click. Very satisfying. So I made another one of those in a bigger shape. See the relationship between these. This one is also the mahogany body, but this is a Thuya burl inset in the lid. And in this case, the sleeve here, there's an inner piece here. So there's no glue line in there at all. That's because the inner piece here is an L-shaped section. So the inside sleeve has a base flange, and then there's a ring that fits down on it. So this insert can just fit down in there tight, and it sits on a shoulder tight, and you see it inside as well. So that was kind of innovative. You don't see any magnets on the outside. It closes with a snap. It's a little bit clunky in its proportions, but I'm okay with that. It's big enough for, whatever you want to do. So I'm quite happy with that one. So
Hey, John,
yeah,
what's the insert? You said it was some kind of spalted wood?
spalted tamarind.
Tamarind.
Yeah, which I call it drop and drop. This
Right.
is an end grade insert. You get it in a 3x3 log or square, about 12 or 18 inches long, and the spalting goes all through it. Some places in this 18-inch piece, there's hardly any. Other places, it's quite dramatic. So, I'm looking for something that makes a pretty little picture there. So that's what I got in this one.
Hey, John, there was, I don't know if you ever see the stuff from the Plumier Foundation, but they did a whole study on box designs where they said, let's try a standard approach for like the out or the body of the box, but then you can have different lids and different shapes for the lids, different shapes for the bases. So where you're going with this sounds a lot like that, where you're saying, okay, this is the base piece that can't change, and then these are all the components that could, and here's what they would look like if you interchange those.
I wouldn't mind seeing that from the Plumier Society. These are not close enough in size to be quite interchangeable, although some of them are. And I guess, as you can imagine by now, I have quite a stash of rings that didn't quite fit. And one day I just made blanks. I roughed out pairs of blanks that are ready to be shaped into boxes like this. I've got about 6 of them down on it, and I find that pretty efficient. But I've also, by making multiples of this, is another place I've gotten to. I can make a box like this now in one session, really. And it's about all I can do. I mean, I go down and I work for about 2 hours, and I come up for lunch, and I go down for another hour, and at the end of it, I've got a box. And so that's a lot better for me than having things that take 2 or 3 days to make and multiple sessions and all that stuff. So that's also a part of my process, is trying to understand this well enough and be good enough at it to just go directly to the result that I want, and not have so much head scratching and messing around as I go, and false starts and going back to the drawing. And you make enough of them, you get to where that's the case. And I really feel I'm at that with this one. This is not, there was no drawing for this. This is just made. I'm quite happy with this shape, with the way this works. Yeah, I think this is my best box so far. So
Hey, John, I think you need to make a blurb book of how you did it. You lose me on this Zoom description of sleeves, and I'm fascinated with it, but I need to see it in print. You're an editor, and blurb nowadays lets you make them real quick without having to use a publisher and all that.
I made a PowerPoint. I began a PowerPoint, and then I realized the PowerPoint was using pictures that do not. My problem is I keep refining how I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And I made the PowerPoint, and wait, I don't quite do it that way anymore. So I'm going to remake the PowerPoint. These are not the trick glasses, but the trick glasses really help. So that's coming. That's what's going to come next for me, is a PowerPoint on exactly how all that can work in my process now.
Hey, John, I got a question about the finishes. It may be a silly one, but my grandfather's old tools and things like that, and the handles were not polished, they weren't shiny, but over time, they get a patina by people handling them. Do you think that with your Osmo satin finish over time, the dome shape or those parts that get handled the most will actually develop a bit of shine and give it even more depth?
Yes, I think that's exactly what will happen.
Because that is really, that really takes a really nice piece that, like you're making, and makes it even nicer, because it develops its own history over time, if you will.
Exactly. Carrying it in your pants pocket basically polishes it as you go. And as you and I have been experimenting with monogramming these things using the laser pecker too, that's a whole other range of things that I want to get back to doing. Wait a minute, I just inadvertently hit a wrong button. Yeah. I think that's that worked out. So Ziegler has a laser burner, and we used it to put initials in the top of the lids of these things, and also a signature. And I like that a lot. I almost like it enough to get my own laser thing, but I think it's actually more fun to go down to Ziegler's and do it at his place. So.
Well, I had a great time, but I would tell you, I would not do it to that tamarind spalted insert you made, because that is beautiful by itself. I would never touch the top of that.
No, it's the mahogany. What I'm after.
No, not the
really,
mahogany, the insert you put in there.
Yeah, you wouldn't do it on this one.
No, that's beautiful like it is.
But on these, that with your monogram in the middle of it will acquire a patina in the pocket over pocket or purse over a long time.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm after with these things. I like, you look at some of the 18th century things that turn up in the antique shops, and one of my oldest friends is an antique silver specialist. And she just waxes ecstatic when she finds something that somebody is like this, that somebody's used for years and years and years. And I'm trying to get to the base case for some of that 18th and 19th century stuff.
John, you're obviously well, you have already explored it. The finishing is going to be part. You won't expect poly or lacquer to shine off with that patina, would you? Like it's in the pocket. What will happen to it? It's not going to let the wood be changed by rubbing it with the human hand.
I find the Osmo allows it does. It's very slowly, but it does. The Osmo, that's what I'm loving about Osmo. And I have also I've done two innovations there for me. Instead of using stop loss bags or anything like that, or little rags to put it on, I took the Duxbury advice. I drill a little hole in the side of the can right up near the lid, and I put a screw in it. I take the screw out, and then I don't use a rag to apply it. I use my good old fingers, drip the wood on and rub it in there with my fingers, and then turn on the lathe and buff it right off. I like and that's the first base coat. Then the next two coats are off the lathe. Put the Osmo on the same way and wipe it right off and let it dry. And I use a wire in-out basket as the holder. I just put them in there so they don't, they can be finished on all sides and they don't get messed with. So that's my finish process. But I find the Osmo really needs a couple of days to set. And one of the things that I've also been finding happens with it, scratches turn up in the lids that I didn't realize were there because I didn't sand it well enough. And so I'm back on the lathe, sanding it off, sanding right to 400, putting it back on. So I have to discipline myself to sand to 400 in the first place, get all those damn scratches out before I put the first Osmo on is really where I want to go with it. I really appreciate all the comments I get, and it's very helpful to me these discussions.
Well, John, let me just ask another somewhat, well, I guess an ignorant question. When I first started turning, I didn't know anything, right? So I bought some wet finish sandpaper. I think it goes up to like, I don't know what it is, 5,000 or something ridiculous. Use some water. So I just sanded the hell out of my first bowl. And even today, when I look at it, I'm amazed at how smooth it is. So recently, I've been pulling those little pieces of sandpaper out and wet sanding some things just to see. And it's not a glass finish, but it's a whole lot better than I can even get with 400 or 600 sandpaper. Have you ever thought about using that with some of your boxes?
Yeah, and I used to do that with Waterlox finish. Wet sanding Waterlox makes a really good finish that way. I have not done that with Osmo yet, but I think that might be another thing I should be doing, is wet sanding the Osmo.
Or buff it.
I don't like when it buffs. I would only way I'd buff it with a dry wheel. When I buff it with white diamond and then wax it, it makes it kind of blurry in a way that I don't like.
I would think the Osmo would seal the pores well enough that the white diamond would not embed.
Maybe I'm not putting enough Osmo on before I buff, but I've done some experimenting with that, but I have not enjoyed it. I think the play I'm after is a dry wheel, I think is maybe the right answer, like Don uses. I think that might be better than white diamond in this situation. Or maybe a tiny little bit of white diamond on the wheel. The brown rouge is way too rough, takes off way too much.
Well, I know a common mistake is people put too much white diamond on the wheel. You only touch it for about one second.
I think you're right. I think you're right. The problem is that once you get wax on the third wheel, you've got wax on the wheel. You're not going to be able to, that's not a dry wheel anymore, and you're never going to get it to be a dry wheel. There's always wax on it. The wax doesn't seem to interfere if you then reapply Osmo. I think the Osmo solvent is good enough to kind of eat through that wax, but it still adulterates the finish, and it doesn't give you the best result. You get a little bit of orange peel in it.
Every time, Mike, every time I go to my buffing wheels, I think of you. I'm trying to remember which one you said to just touch. You say the diamond, you just touch it a little bit with the white. I probably put way too much on. Yeah. So.
Yeah.
But to your point, John, to your point, you can go into almost anywhere and get another wheel if you want to have a dry wheel and your wax wheel if you really want to.
Yeah, I agree, and it's a whole other. I guess that's another thing to get deeply into and get figured out.
I think Don got me onto that. I have a plain white wheel that I can slam in. It's on a MT2, and I just quickly put it on the lathe, and I can dry polish something off. So
I think maybe that's what I need to do.
Hey, before you get away, the finish. Last night, I'm going to share this real quick. Last night, I was totally surprised that this Jeff guy, this is what he uses on his art pieces. I think maybe Toby's using something similar to this.
Toby uses something similar, yeah.
Is that any other guys have used it? Have you buffed it or anything like that? He puts 2 coats after he lime waxes his texturing. He puts 2 coats of this on and calls it done. So
yeah, okay. That can work pretty well.
Okay, I'm gonna try that. So
yeah, that's an acrylic finish.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
That's what I mean. Think about, you wouldn't get the sheen of hands holding it and stuff, I don't think, with that kind of finish. So.
We burned up half the hour here. I got 3 hands up, so I'm going to stop talking now and thank you all for the comments. And I'm going to give Rich Colvin the floor for a minute. Rich, what do you got today?
Hey, so it's a quick one. I have, can I share?
Yeah, can we see your face? All that?
Yeah.
We just got no camera yet. There you go.
So this is a website that Mike Peace took over from another fella, and I'm just hosting it. I just want to let people know about it. It's called Mustard Monster. And if you have a Powermatic lathe, there are a lot of useful articles out here that this fella compiled over the years. And I haven't done a lot with them other than just put them out here for use for people. But if you have a Powermatic lathe, some of the things you would do could be useful out here. Mike, did you want to add anything more?
No, other than it's very comprehensive when you drill down with, especially for issues. If someone's buying a brand new one and they've got issues or questions about how do you install it, how many people it takes, what's the best way to move it. There's, it gets pretty comprehensive. Electrical problems, noise problems. There's just a lot of really in-depth information.
Hey, could you put that in the chat?
Will do.
Just by the way, I don't know if John Kelsey knows, but we need to return our Powermatic to the Mott's Rick Baker. And so we're going to be looking, I think, for a replacement for our it wasn't our Powermatic, it was on loan.
So I got an option for you here.
They want it back or what?
Yeah, he wants it back. So we're not going to have this month. It's going to be disappearing. Me and Doug and Ben are going to take it down and take it over to Rick's place in Downingtown, I think. So we need to look for a new one. Do you know if this website also deals with like a used?
No.
No, it's just it's repair and support information.
Okay. Well, not that's not useless, but it's not going to help us find a new one. That's all.
Also, if you're drilling down on Powermatic stuff, there's also a Powermatic Facebook page where there's a lot of discussion with, and it's generally oriented around either lathe stands or additions or dealing with problems. So that might be worth looking at also if you've got a Powermatic.
I haven't seen a club demo at Lancaster that needed the size of the Powermatic yet. I think it's overkill. I think you could do a lot better with a smaller lathe.
Well, it might be. I would say that Doug's dangerous outboard off-center jig was the only one that I can think that needed a
Yeah.
heavy lathe.
Exactly. Everything else that people demonstrate is small enough to work on the Galaxy or the Nova that's already in the space. I mean, I'm not sure you need to replace this thing.
Well, if you need
Well-
something bigger, the government's selling one. We were just showing this.
We'll get Kaufman Kitchens to shore up the structure before we put that one in there.
You'll never get it up there.
No, I think the Galaxy will probably be okay to be the demonstration lathe, but I still think we could use a replacement even if it's not a really heavy one. But that's club stuff. So.
That 2014, I would look very closely at that Powermatic 2014. It's certainly more expensive than a lot of smaller or lesser quality lathes, but it's solid as a rock. It's just like the big one, but downsized a little bit.
Okay, thanks, Mike.
Same features, controls, 1 1/4 inch by 8 thread. It's great.
I've also noticed that since we've had the space, lathes seem to show up. Lathes come. There's 7 of them in there now. There wasn't any. There was one lousy lathe when we started in that space, and now there's 7 good lathes. So, it doesn't. Chance favors the prepared mind.
That's for sure.
John, the one issue to keep in mind is a lot of us are not going to be Powermatic owners. So a variety of lathes that are in the $1,500 and less price range, I'm talking about used ones, would probably favor a lot of the new people coming in. You're not going to buy a Powermatic or even a Robust or one way for many years unless you're experienced. Well,
you're also going to inherit my Robust.
Okay.
Well, hopefully not for many years, John.
Not soon.
That's another question. Who knows?
Who knows? Well, but I understand what you're saying, Jim. And I agree, John, that we probably don't need a monster lathe at the shop. But I do think that we couldn't use a replacement in terms of numbers of lathes because we almost fill up the lathes on open shops now.
Yeah, and we've got lots of small lathes in the shop. There's no question that another one would just add to the thing. It doesn't really matter as far as the size. So when you're, and being a Powermatic user, I think it's just good to have a range of lathes in our club. So the only thing we're missing is a big one.
I can't, when I wanted to bring in my drilling apparatus, again, it won't fit on the Powermatic, I can't demonstrate it in the club, because there's no lathe there that fits. It might fit the Galaxy now that we have the Galaxy.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, Don Svob. Don, what do you got?
Good morning. I've done a couple of pieces. Do you hear me okay?
Yeah, we sound good. We got you full screen.
Okay, very good. I don't do a lot of usable pieces, or functional, but this is one that I just finished, a little serving tray out of walnut. And it's my very first embellishment with the Arbortech ball.
And it's just at random dots? Is that what you're making around the rim?
Just random dots. Is that better?
Yeah. You attempted to fill them with colored plastic or anything like that?
No, I just actually I put a coat of shellac on the piece, and then I put a little bit of the reddish cherry dye just over the holes, that section, and you hardly can see the red glow over the walnut.
But do you think the red made an appreciable difference, though? I mean, a satisfactory difference?
What it did, it generated another depth in lighting.
Yeah.
That's it. And then this is more what I do traditionally. This is an apple root that it takes me quite a while to do them. This one I've had in storage for about 8 years, and it dried out and became extremely hard. And the only way I could get it to turn and not fly apart is it's the first time I've ever done one where I had to start right at the top and do a uniform taper all the way down to the bottom. So at the top, I'm about a 1/4 inch, and then when I get to the bottom, I'm about a 1/2 inch. And that allowed the rigidity so it didn't fly apart.
Do you turn the inside before the outside or the outside before the inside?
No, I always turn the outside of the roots first, so I have an idea what the integrity of the wood is. And if there's not enough strength, then that sort of blows off right away. Whereas if I did it the other way around, I would never know what's not strong enough on the outside to hold it together.
Do you then tape it together or something when you do the inside?
Yeah, then I wrap it with plastic packing tape because it's got fiberglass in it, and it don't stretch with the RPM, and then that allows me to turn the inside. And again, this particular one, there's a spot right about here, as you can see, and that's where I ran my steady rest all the way around.
Ah.
Gave it a spot for the wheels to run.
Yeah.
And if I didn't have that, and I was going to run it across this port here, the steady rest, or up in this area, what I do is I have what I call a halo or a racetrack. It's just a plywood disc that I put over it, and then I put shingle wedges in till I get it round and secured and hot glue it in. And now my steady rest has a place to run around.
Now, where do you get the apple roots?
Well, this particular one is one that I dug up out of my own orchard. And because we're in the fruit belt here in Niagara, Ontario, there's actually a lot of orchards being ripped up because they're getting old. And then they replant new ones after. So I have a good supply of orchard wood.
So you're not in Alberta, you're in Niagara. I thought you were an Alberta guy.
No, I'm an Ontario person.
Okay.
What's the bottom look like?
I think that's a remarkable piece.
Okay, great.
And then I sign it and everything. And I number every piece I do. And that way I have a record of the date and the time and everything. And then when we catalog them and put them on my website, we know which one is.
I think that's a really good habit. I wish I had gotten into it 20 years ago.
What could I say?
More any questions for Don? Questions for Don?
Like the
what's the one over your right shoulder?
One over this one, what, back here in the corner?
Your right shoulder, or no, the one on the other side, whichever side that is of you. There.
Oh, this one here, the teardrop one. Yeah, this is
like that.
one that. This is one that. Actually, if you saw the original piece that I started with, it's an interesting shape that came out of it.
That's a lovely piece.
Yeah. And then there's one more that's there that you might see, that one there.
I see one in the other direction as well.
This one here.
Oh.
This one's
something inside it. Did you put another piece inside?
Oh, it's got a shopping bag in it that we carry them with. We found that all these bags that everybody just uses for stores to give you away, we end up with a pile of them, and they're the simplest way to pack for the shows. You just put the wood in it, and now it doesn't rub against each other, and you can pull them out of the box real easy. And if you're just carrying one or two, you can carry them by the straps.
I want to add one other comment. You talked about if you'd have seen it before we start turning it. I wish that I had photographed every piece I turned when I put the blank on the lathe. I'm trying to make that a habit because I think people would be impressed how we make what we do out of what we have. You know, I just
Sure.
think that would be a wonderful thing to have a framed picture by your piece showing where the wood was when you started.
When I started turning, I actually have a printout of one that I did exactly that with. And in the 5 years that I was showing, I never really had a comment saying, oh, gee, it's nice to see it at the beginning. And I just thought printing them up and everything else is just a lot more work for a show just for one day than it's really worth. But I do understand, I do have them on my camera if anybody ever asks what did they look like. And I try to take the first piece.
You can make a pretty nice PowerPoint using those.
Yes.
Thanks a lot, Don.
You're welcome.
Any other comments for Don? Okay, I see a new guy here, David Bell, who just popped his hand up. But I also know that Toby has been itching to show us a slideshow that he prepared for us. So I'm going to give Toby the floor. And David, if we squeeze you out, we'll put you on first next week. Is that okay with you? Okay. Toby, you got it.
This on and share. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, good.
And see.
Okay. So this is a maple burl. It's 10 by. Wait a minute. Here we go. 10 inches high, 20 inches across, and 5 inches thick. And I didn't cut it this way. This is how I received it. So this is what I have to deal with. So here I laid it down, and my first thought was to go with this, get the biggest bowl that I could out of it, which would be this black line around here.
This one
And then
here.
I'd have a smaller bowl over here, and this area over here was questionable because of this bark inclusion and also this crack going down through here. Same on the left side, there's a bark inclusion here that I wasn't sure about. So since my preference though is to make natural edge or live edge pieces, I scrapped that option, making the big bowl, and I went with these green lines instead. So there'd be a vase here in the middle, another vase beside it, sort of opposite shape. And then I'd still have these two pieces on the side to deal with later. So here I have it cut up, those shapes. And it's back in place, this, you know, the same shape as it was to begin with. And let's see, I'm on D. Here I turn the pieces on the side to show the cut edge where off the bandsaw, and I just sprayed some water on to highlight the figure.
That's wonderful. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's a nice piece of wood. Okay, I took the first vase shape and put it on the lathe. I'm starting to shape it. Here I have it turned around. This is mostly shaped, and it's in the chuck here. And here I took some that milliput I've been talking about, and I took just a little bit of it on my fingers and wet my fingers, and I made like a slurry and just rubbed it all over this piece of wood. Get in the little cracks that are there that you can just see, which are on the edge of the original burl. Now the milliput doesn't penetrate like CA glue does. It just sits on the surface. So when I sand this off, that's all that'll be there, just the filled cracks. And that way I can dye it without having the CA glue interfere with my dyeing process. All right, here I'm hollowing it out. First I drilled a hole in here with a 1.25 inch Forstner bit, and then a bowl gouge to hollow the rest of it out.
How
Here it
deep
is.
do you go with that hole compared to the finished deep? Do you go to full depth or short of it by how much?
With the Forstner bit?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got down to almost as thick as I'm going to make the walls here.
Okay.
Not quite, because I have to go over it then again with the bowl gouge to smooth it out. So there it is, back in place in the original spot. And here's the second vase, I have it on with putting a tenon on it, shaping it off. Here's where it was missing over here on this side. Here I've got the shape kind of refined down. I just started with the Forstner bit over here. I start with a smaller one, then I put a bigger one on as I go down deeper, so I can get the Jacobs chuck fit down in through there. I sprayed some water on this also to show the figure. And behind you can see where it was originally laying.
Oh, wait a minute, you drill what, say a 1-inch hole and then an 1.25-inch hole, or what's your
Yes.
sequence there?
Yeah, about 1 inch, like whatever size my Jacobs chuck is, just slightly larger than that. So here it is back in its position, all sanded. These are both sanded and ready to be dyed. And P. So I popped the bark inclusion out of here as best I could, and I could see that it didn't go very deep and it wasn't much of a concern. And my first thought was to make this shape of a vase here. But more I thought about it, the more I thought it would be really hard to hollow out down here. I almost have to do it from the bottom, or anyway. I forgot that idea, and then I flipped that piece over, and I used this natural edge up here and just made this sort of small vase shape. And then I have another piece left over down here to figure out what to do with. So here I am shaping that vase. And then it's finished back in its spot. And here you can see where it came from. So here I have T. This is for the remaining piece on this side, I decided to make right down here a lidded box in this shape. And I'll make the lid out of the same piece that it came from.
We're not seeing, oh, there it is.
Oh, okay. Okay, this is that piece was left down, was about 3/4 of an inch wider on one dimension than the other. So I sliced that 3/4 inch off on the bandsaw. And at first I was just going to make like a little dish down here. But then I thought more about it. And over here on this piece, I was going to make this vase, which is upside down. And I'll use this disc here as a lid for this vase over here, which you'll see as I keep going. And I think I failed to, I failed to photograph turning the little box, but here's the knob that I turned for the top of it. And here it is back in place. So this lid came from this same section of wood, and this knob came from this piece over here that I cut off.
So your goal here is to use the whole burl up while you're at it. You're not going to keep some for later.
That's what it's going to end. There'll be a couple scraps left, but yeah, I just wanted as much as I could at it because it's nice wood.
And you don't have to store all those little bits that you
down.
turn later on either.
What was that? I missed it.
You don't have to store all those extra little bits to turn later on sometime,
Oh.
maybe.
Right, right. So here I'm starting to turn that upside down vase. I have the tenon on it. And here I turned it around and I'm putting a little recess down for the lid to fit down inside. And I didn't photograph turning the lid either. Sometimes you get involved in turning and you forget what, I'm not used to taking a lot of pictures, so I forgot. Here it is. Here's the lid turned down here, which was that piece that was cut off laying down here. And then I turned a little off. I cut this little square off. That's what's left over. And I turned this little knob for the lid.
Hey,
And
Toby, I love how you have them all lined up, showing where they came from in the piece.
yeah, I thought that would be a neat idea. It's because you can visualize where they came from, and that's just piece where they were. And
kind of like a birthing image, you know, before a baby before it's born. So.
right.
I would not have known how to get one piece out of that nasty piece of wood, and you got 5.
Yeah, well, it's all working with the burl and figuring out what to do with it. Here are the pieces then finished, dyed, and the glossy finish on them, and they're not buffed yet, but that's where they were in that piece of wood. That's
very cool.
I'm partial to blue.
Wow.
And this is a recap. Here's where it started. Here's the rough turn pieces, or all pieces, I guess, and the final shot. And then next week or week after, I'll take individual photos of these pieces in my photo booth to show them off. We won't do that now.
Would you show the original piece again? I want to get a picture of it.
Right there?
Yes, thank you.
By the way,
Yeah, that's what it shows, my thought process of where I originally was going to go and then changed my mind.
by the way, Toby, on the last shot, I wish that one vessel was turned right side up. That bothers me sitting on its knob.
But that's where it was. That's where it was positioned in the.
I know, but it would sit upright and still look like it belonged there. So.
That's amazing,
Yeah.
Toby. That's a remarkably clear demo of how you do that. And it's like all these things, you can't do that until you've done a lot.
Experience helps for sure.
Yeah.
Luckily, I didn't blow any of them up or mess them up on the way.
And the brown on the one on the left, the one that's laying on its side, is that the bark inclusion that made the brown there?
No, this is actually some heartwood, which was kind of just had a little bit of red tint to it. So I went ahead and run over with red dye and then blue over the whole thing. Same with this piece here. There's more to it that you can't see on the other side.
So you can cover it all with blue and it won't bother you. Do the red first?
Yes, that's the way I do it. It does turn a little bit purpley, but not too much.
Okay. You're using really dilute blue, so that helps, right? So.
Yeah, dilute the dye pretty much, yep.
And you're kind of just dabbing it on.
No, I brush it on.
Brush
I use a
it on.
brush.
Boy, amazing. I'm blown away by this. Any other comments for Toby?
That was dry wood, right, Toby?
Yes, this has been dry for, probably 6, 8, 10 years, maybe. I don't know. Because it was dry before I got it, and that was 5 years ago.
Fantastic
I still have a
demonstration.
What was that? I missed that.
Fantastic demonstration.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Remarkable.
Very impressive.
See, Toby, I think you should frame that and hang it above your display at the store. Wouldn't that intrigue? That would intrigue the people, the phases of it as you take it apart. So
We're actually thinking about having a tablet laying there and running a slideshow of not just me, but all the other artists too, about how they do things. I think it'd be very helpful to the customers.
Like a museum kiosk, really.
Yeah.
Well, I think you ought to sell it as a group. I mean, somebody who really appreciates wood turning would really love to see all these pieces come out of the single burl.
Possibly. I find it's hard to sell a lot of pieces because that,
No, it's a lot of money.
Big expenditure.
True.
it'll make a great mandel row of images of vessels sitting on top next to each other. Yeah, just move them in a row, so. About $1,000.
Yeah, you're gonna break up the family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is that like how many days work for you? Is that?
Well, it was stretched out a couple hours each day, but it probably took me a week or so to do it all.
Amazing. And another delightful coffee hour. I'm afraid we've got a couple of hands left over that I'm going to ask you guys to, Mike Golka and Dave Bell, to come back next week with your hands up. unless there's a real quick question, but if you want to show us anything, we want to give you the time it takes to show it and talk about it. So please come back next week and bring it along, and I'll remember you and put you on first. Is that okay with you, Mike? Give me a hands up if that's okay.
Fine with me.
Okay. Thank you all. A lovely morning. I really appreciate the attention on my own work and on other people's as well. Another successful coffee hour.
It's always
Thank
nice
you.
to have some hands left over after you're done turning.
Well, I don't like to leave people hanging, you know, if they come here
No, I
and they want to show
know.
us something, I like to, especially new guys, 'cause it takes some courage to come and put your work in front of this very, very experienced and critical group.
And it's
But,
tough to get the share down. That's the first part.
that's the other part is, you know, just how do I do that? Anyway, thanks a lot, you guys. We'll see you all next week.
See you next week.
Take care.
Y'all,
Bye.
bye-bye.
Yeah.
Enjoy the snow.
Yeah.
Wood shop. Thank God for wood.